Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and time for another Patreon question. This one comes from Dave Ensminger, and he asks, have you ever made your own retro video game using an engine like Adventure Game Studio or the like? Great question. I'm actually going to open it up a little bit more than that and say, have you used, say, a modding tool or a level editor as well? And to help me answer this question, I'm going to reach out to a bunch of creators, and we're going to start with Scott the Woz.
I desperately wanted to make video games as a kid, and I would try to find any possible avenue to fail at it. There is a PC game called Video Game Tycoon. It said how you can make your own video games and burn them to a CD. I ordered it via one of those Scholastic Book Fair catalogs, and I waited and waited, and I finally got it, and I ran home, and I put it in the computer, and it never worked. I still have no idea what that game looks like. I would dabble in official game makers like WarioWare DIY, and I would lie to kids on the school bus about the game Drawn to Life. That was a game where you could draw your own character, so on the school bus, I would tell kids, oh man, I made this game, look, that's my character in the game, and then they would be like, oh my god, oh, is there any power-ups in the game? And I would go, sure. So I took the DS and I drew on a cape on my character and I gave it to them, and they would go, wow, it's actually faster. However, I wanted to make my own video game, so I moved on to Flash game templates, where they would have these website apps where you could make your own video game online, but in reality it was just a Flash game maker thing where you could add your own images to pre-existing templates. But I ate that up. I would add my own images and boom, my own video game. But then I tried Game Salad on Mac, which was a much more robust creation tool, though for somebody with little to no programming knowledge, it was kind of hard to deviate from the pre-existing game templates they gave me. So in the end, I pretty much just took their templates and added my own images and sprites to it and called them my own video games. So to answer your question, no.
Hey there, Ron here from MadLittlePixel. Now, MetalJesus sent out a bunch of questions from you guys, members of his community. I read through a bunch of them, a lot of great questions, but one that stuck out to me in particular was, have you ever made your own retro-style video game using like a game maker type engine? And yes, I did. The reason behind it was because way back in '97, I used to play this MMO, massively multiplayer online game, called Nexus: The Kingdom of the Winds. It was in beta at that time. It came out in Korea a couple years prior. It was a Korean game based off of Korean mythology. Had like Super Nintendo style sprite action going on. Really enjoyed it. I played it for many years. It was a very small game. Everybody knew each other. Single server. You could become infamous, famous. It was nuts. A lot of fun. A lot of crazy sleepless nights playing that game. But at some point it changed. And I wanted to relive the way it was back in the late 90s. So I began looking for like an MMO builder. And I found this program called Confuse that had both client and server side to it. And it was pretty simple to use. So I began deconstructing sprites from Nexus: The Kingdom of the Winds, reanimating them, recoloring them, making it kind of my own in a way, even though it wasn't. Making maps from tiles that I had pulled from screenshots as well. Tested it with a handful of people. It was really fun, but just never really took off. It's something I really would love to revisit one day and just kind of get back into it as like a little side project hobby type of thing. But it was really awesome. So hey guys, really do appreciate it. There's my answer.
So when I was a kid, before I got a Sega Genesis, I got a Texas Instruments TI-99, and it was this game system that was sort of a computer, but it said it played games. It came with one game, and it came with like this programming game. I don't really remember it, but I did play around with it, and I made this crazy robot that would do things. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. The graphics were barely existent, and once I got a Sega Genesis, it was all over for that thing. That thing ended up in the bottom of my closet for many, many years. The other thing that I was going to say is that I did find a game in my collection that was kind of interesting. And this is a Windows PC game. 3D games, millions of ways to create your own cool games. Shooter, horror, war, space, driving, and of course, cartoon. Who doesn't like to make a cartoon game? But yeah, I've never really had any success with making new games or making them interesting in any other way than what I just described. The exception is that I am at some point wanting to check out the Dreams game on PS4.
Have I ever made a video game? My short answer is no, but my longer answer is as follows. When I was a little girl, I used to make a lot of board games, and I used to draw this ship. I can see this ship with multi-rooms, multi-floors. on a piece of paper and I used to colour it in bright colours. And the aim of the game for my 6-year-old self was I had 2 dice and I had to roll a double to get my penny, which was my character, literally a 1 pence, to move from room to room. I ended up drawing 2 in the end, and me and my brother had to play, and the first one to clear all the rooms, literally by rolling doubles, was the winner. I know it's not a massively glamorous answer, but I'm not very apt when it comes down to developing video games. That's where I'm pretty sure a lot of Metal Jesus' viewers will be pretty much more skilled than me. But still, I really enjoyed video games. But if I was to develop a video game, it would definitely be along the lines of some kind of RPG. And my particular role is, I guess, not necessarily from the dev point of view, but I would like to act in one. I feel like I could really get all into the bodysuits and the facial expressions and scripting. That kind of stuff really excites me. So that's what I would like to do. So I've put a little bit of a twist on this answer. Hope you guys like it.
When I was in 2nd grade, my parents got an Apple IIe computer for the house. It was the same computer we had at school. And they also got me a subscription to 321 Contact magazine, and they had a computer section of that magazine where you could type in basic code and run some very rudimentary games. But it got me really thinking and excited about maybe making my own games. How cool was it that I had something in my house that I could use to make games? Now, unfortunately, I did not have the ability to learn assembly language back then, primarily because I was a little kid, and also because the programming tools were rather expensive, and there was nobody that knew how to program assembly language to teach me anything. So I decided that until I learned, I would at least create the concept of the game. And so I thought out this whole concept of flying through a sewer and attacking mutant creatures that were growing down there. The idea was inspired by my father, who grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and he always would tell me about these alligators that were roaming the sewers of New York City. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to make that into a game where you could save the city. And wouldn't you know, about 10 or 15 years later, I'm a teenager, I got a Sega CD, and packed in that Sega CD box was a game called Sewer Shark, which was pretty much what I envisioned as a kid. It's pretty funny how ideas can pop up in different places like that. But Sewer Shark really is the game that I thought of as a kid, and unfortunately it wasn't very successful, so maybe I saved myself a lot of disappointment.
No, I can't say that I have, but it made me remember that a few years ago it was popular among YouTubers to have their own game made. Like I, for example, remember Radical Reggie's game, Radical Adventures or something like that. And there were several other YouTubers that had like retro games made for them. And I also remember, and I had actually forgotten all about this, but I remember, I think it was the guy that made that Radical Reggie game. I think he asked me if I wanted my own game, but nothing happened and I forgot all about that. But it was definitely a thing, I feel like, for 2018, that sort of time period that it was popular. But no, I can't say that I've ever even considered making a retro game. If I were to make a game, I would much rather make like a 3D game, not a retro pixel game, even though they are probably easier to make and make your own sprites for. I mean, you know what I mean. So, Isha Gaming's Radical Adventures could maybe be a game that's coming out in 2021. Limited special collector's edition. And the gameplay is about curling your own hair. I'm kidding.
Okay, so have I ever made a retro game? So the answer's no, because you know those games that have the like create your own level things like Mario Maker, or like one of my first introductions to it was in, or at least the first one I like spent a lot of time on was Little Big Planet. And if you remember, in Little Big Planet you can like turn off the gravity, and then you like can like screw stuff to the walls and whatever, however you want to build your level, and then you turn gravity back on and all the stuff you forgot to nail down all falls, and you're like, well, dang it. And that's kind of been my experience. Or I build a level in something like Little Big Planet, or I did a lot of that in Battle Block Theater. But then you're like, wow, I'm really proud of that. That's really good. And then you see other people's levels and you're like, oh, never mind. So you know what? I have ideas for games though. So maybe one day I'll try again, but it has not been that day yet.
Oh my god, I am so happy somebody mentioned Adventure Game Studio. That is just such a great mention. That is where people go to make point-and-click adventure fan games and sequels to games we've kind of lost in the point-and-click adventure community, the people that love that. So you'll see a lot of indie games made with that. But my brother and I actually are working on a game in the style of Undertale or Stardew Valley. My brother's learning the Godot engine. I'm helping with script and testing, of course. And it's really going to be a big tribute to Phantasy Star 2. We can't legally make a direct sequel, but that is the plan, to really make a tribute to Phantasy Star 2. And I'd like to plug a game for a friend. Huge recommendation here. Dewaz for the Game Boy is a horror kind of role-playing game. Not really point and click, but by somebody. It's an indie game. And this is probably the best Game Boy game I have ever played in my life. It is no joke. This thing is amazing. You gotta check it out.
For me, the programming bug really started with my Commodore 64. I remember getting gaming magazines or computer magazines for the Commodore, and in the back of them, they would have programs that you could manually type in and get to run. And I remember just wanting to know how all of that code worked, and being very young and going in there and trying to tweak things here and there. I would mess with the algorithms that were in those games to figure out, if I change this number a little bit, does it make my ship fly a little bit faster, or maybe changes the gravity or the how fast the bullets shoot, things like that, which ultimately led for me going to take computer science and learn things like Fortran, Pascal, and COBOL. But I never really ended up programming video games. Instead, what I ended up doing actually was going and getting into audio production, working in a recording studio, both at a professional one and also in my house. And ultimately what that led to actually was me doing original sound effects and background music for video games, specifically for games that were in casinos in Las Vegas. It'd be interesting to walk around the floor in Vegas and see if there are still some of those games that are running that are still running my sound effects and original looping music that I created back before YouTube, for sure. So that was a long time ago, but that's primarily, what I did, other than the occasional messing with, level editors and things like that. So that was a really interesting question, and I want to thank all the creators that helped me answer it. If you like what you saw here today, they're all doing really cool stuff on their own channels. I'll put links down in the video description below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.